Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. I want to do a bit of a rogue video right now, very spur of the moment because I've just been done filming some other videos, yeah. I haven't planned this one, but when was it? The other day I watched the film, the hit classic, Matilda, which then got me in the mood to reread the book. It's Roald Dahl. You can read those books in like an hour and a bit. So I began to reread Matilda and I was just overcome with this. By the way, I feel like whenever you talk about some old geezer that's already died, like Roald Dahl, yeah, I kind of feel like nowadays you have to do a bit of a disclaimer, like, oh, modern day standards, bit controversial. I mean, it's probably a bit controversial, like in the end of it. When was he born? Yeah, he was born well long ago. Proper old geezer. Born 1916, died 1990. I wasn't even born then. I feel like you always have to do a bit of a disclaimer, like, you know, there are some things that won't hold up to today's standard that, well, yeah, so, like I went on his Wikipedia page just to read more about him, and there was a whole bit of like criticisms, controversy, and one of them was misogyny, and it's kind of like, yeah, I'd expect that for someone born in 1916, to be honest, so I'm not personally offended. But sometimes I feel like you have to say this now, because otherwise you'll get like one or two people being like, why are you talking about him? He was this, that and the other. And it's like, yeah, he's born in 1916, he's already dead. And like, you can't, what you can do? Cancel him? He's already in the, I'm so morbid. I'm so weird. He's already in the ground. What are you going to do? Dig him up and cancel him? Any relatives of, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to get cancelled. I bring him up because I was rereading Matilda, and I'd forgotten how funny it was. He was so funny in the way he would write. I'm going to read you several examples that tickled me, just because I kind of feel like he was so funny in a way that had me afterwards being like, was he on something? Maybe. But was he actually on... School teachers suffer a good deal from having to listen to this sort of twaddle from proud parents, but they usually get their own back when the time comes to write the end of term reports. If I were a teacher, I would cook up some real scorchers for the children of doting parents. Your son Maximilian, I would write, is a total washout. I hope you have a family business you can push him into when he leaves school, because he sure as heck won't get a job anywhere else. I feel like his books are funny in a way that appeals to both adults and children, because I was thoroughly enjoying Matilda. I don't see how sawdust can help you sell second-hand cars, Daddy. That's because you're an ignorant little twit, the father said. His speech was never delicate, but Matilda was used to it. She also knew that he liked to boast, and she would egg him on shamelessly. You must be very clever to find a use for something that costs nothing, she said. I wish I could do it. You couldn't, the father said. You're too stupid. The book Matilda is just like some weird fever dream, and it gets it goes from like here to here when Trunchbull is introduced, who is the real main character, the real protagonist of Matilda. At this point, Mr. Wormwood came noisily into the room. He was incapable of entering any room quietly, especially at breakfast time. He always had to make his appearance felt immediately by creating a lot of noise and clatter. One could almost hear him saying, "It's me, here I come, the great man himself, the master of the house, the wage earner, the one who makes it possible for all the rest of you to live so well. Notice me and pay your respects." Me? So relatable. When am I going to get noticed for being amazing? Miss Trunchbull, the headmistress, was something else altogether. She was a gigantic holy terror, a fierce tyrannical monster who frightened the life out of the pupils and teachers alike. There was an aura of menace about her even at a distance, and when she came up close you could almost feel the dangerous heat radiating from her as from a red-hot rod of metal. When she marched, Miss Trunchbull never walked. She always marched like a stormtrooper with long strides and arms are swinging. It's so like, it's such good imagery. You can really imagine it. It's just, I think Trunchbull's really funny to me because the way she's described, the way she's always yelling, it's like how when I was in year 7 at my secondary school, there was this teacher, this older teacher, who like everyone had heard the rumours, and she was kind of like this cult figure in my hometown. Yeah, because all of us who had older siblings, they had run-ins with her, and she was just crazy and shouting all the time. And when you're a year 7, you're like this big, you're like 2 foot tall. She scared the shit out of you. But then when I became year 9 or 10, I decided to take her course on as GCSE. And then we all found that we were being put with this teacher who would just like yell and scream and stuff. I mean, on like, I think year 10, I walked into class and I got sent out immediately to stand outside. That was her favourite thing to say as well, stand outside. Me and my best mate made a whole like little song. Yeah, she told me to stand outside the deputy head teacher's office. All I'd done is this. I walked in, she'd given us all like sheets of paper, first day of the new term, and I flicked the sheet as if I was reading a newspaper because I was trying to be funny, and she sent me outside for it. But we found, being in year 10, that actually like we really liked her, and she's to date like one of my favourite teachers. I think she came like so hard at the younger years because year 7s do fuck around. But then when you're a bit older, you tend to like fuck around less when you're about 15, 16. But her, to me, as a year 7, was very like Miss Trunchbull. No chokey, but she did have this little like, I want to say small annex at the back of the classroom where if you were really bad and being sent outside or to the back didn't do anything, you'd have to go sit in this cupboard basically. But kind of like a chokey. But you're getting all these like flashbacks of my school. Ultimately harmless though, loved her by the time I was in year 11 and she really liked me. One of the younger years, who was a year younger than me, said, "Oh miss, you know the big Alizee Yeezy, don't you? What do you think?" And she was like, "Oh yes, I like her, she's funny." There you go, see, even at 15. When she marched along the corridor, you could actually hear her snorting as she went, and if a group of children happened to be in her path, she ploughed right on through them like a tank, with small people bouncing off her left and right. Thank goodness we don't meet many people like her in this world, although they do exist. Miss Honey is trying to tell Miss Trunchbull about Matilda and how gifted she is. But Miss Trunchbull takes this as, "Oh, Matilda, oh, I know her father. Her father told me that she's a little rotter. She probably put like a stink bomb in my room." Oh yes, Miss Honey, it darn well is right. In fact, now I come to think of it, I'll bet it was she who put that stink bomb under my desk here first thing this morning. This place stank like a sewer. Of course it was her. I shall have her for that, you see if I don't. What she looked like, nasty little worm, are we bound? I have discovered, Miss Honey, during my long career as a teacher, that a bad girl is a far more dangerous creature than a bad boy. What's more, they're much harder to squash. Squashing a bad girl is like trying to squash a blue bottle. You bang down on it, and the darn thing isn't there. Nasty little things little girls are. Glad I never was one. Oh, but you must have been a little girl once, headmistress. Surely you were. Not for long anyway, Miss Trunchbull barked, grinning. I became a woman very quickly. She's completely off her rocker, Miss Honey thought to herself. She's balmy as a bedbug. Oh, I just love this writing so much. It's... listen to this. This is her, Trunchbull, having a go at Bruce Bogtrot, the Trunchbull Appreciation Society. "This clot," boomed the headmistress, pointing the riding crop at him like a rapier. "This blackhead, this foul carbuncle, this poisonous pustule that you see before you is none other than a disgusting criminal, a denizen of the underworld, a member of the mafia." Imagine saying that about like an 8-year-old. "Who, me?" Bruce Bogtrotter said, looking genuinely puzzled. "A thief," the Trunchbull screamed. "A crook, a pirate, a brigand, a rustler." Rustler's burgers. "Steady on," the boy said. "I mean, dash it all, headmistress. Do you deny it, you miserable little gumboil? Do you plead not guilty?" "I don't know what you're talking about," the boy said, more puzzled than ever. "I'll tell you what I'm talking about, you suppurating little ballista." The Trunchbull shouted. "Yesterday morning, during break, you sneaked like a serpent into the kitchen and stole a slice of my private chocolate cake from my tea tray. That tray had just been prepared for me personally by the cook. It was my morning snack. And as for the cake, it was my own private stock. That was not boy's cake. You don't think for 1 minute I'm going to eat the filth I give to you. That cake was made from real butter and real cream. And he, that robber bandit, that safe cracker, that highwayman standing over there with his socks around his ankles, stole it and ate it." I love how this has just turned into like story time between me and you. I'll do those really long videos on books that suck. I just want to do a little bit of appreciation for a book that I found funny. I have read a lot of other Roald Dahl works, but just this, it really cracks me up for some reason. This is her talking to the kids. "It makes me vomit," she went on, "to think that I'm going to have to put up with a load of garbage like you in my school for the next 6 years. I can see that I'm going to have to expel as many of you as possible, as soon as possible, to save myself from going round the bend." She paused and snorted several times. It was a curious noise. You can hear the same sort of thing if you walk through a riding stable and the horses are being fed. "I suppose," she went on, "your mothers and fathers tell you you're wonderful. Well, I'm here to tell you the opposite, and you'd better believe me." And when she's teaching the kids, this bit I love. All right, said Nigel, wobbling crazily on his one leg. Miss Honey gives us a little song about each word, and we all sing it together and we learn to spell it in no time. Would you like to hear the song about difficulty? I should be fascinated. The Trunchbull said in a voice dripping with sarcasm. Here it is, Nigel said. I actually pronounced it wrong, because of course I did, even though the words were right there, so I'll just do it now. Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. F, F, I, Mrs. C, Mrs. U, Mrs. L, T, Y. That spells difficulty. How perfectly ridiculous, snorted the Trunchbull. Why are all these women married? I cannot for the life of me see why children have to take so long to grow up. I think they do it on purpose. I think I sound like this sometimes. Another extremely brave little boy in the front row spoke up and said, but surely you were a small person once, Miss Trunchbull, weren't you? I was never a small person, she snapped. I've been large all my life, and I don't see why others can't be the same way. But you must have started out as a baby, the boy said. Me? A baby? Shouted the Trunchbull. How dare you suggest such a thing? What cheek? What infernal insolence? What's your name, boy? And stand up when you speak to me. The boy stood up. My name is Eric Ink, Miss Trunchbull, he said. Eric what? The Trunchbull shouted. Ink, the boy said. Don't be an ass, boy. There's no such name. So good. How splendid it would be to walk into this classroom with a gigantic spray gun in my hands and start pumping it. Or better still, some huge strips of sticky paper. I would hang them all round the school and you would all get stuck to them and that would be the end of it. Wouldn't that be a good idea, Miss Honey? If it's a joke, headmistress, I don't think it's a very funny one. I think it's funny. Miss Honey said from the back of class. You wouldn't, would you, Miss Honey, said the Trunchbull said. And it's not meant to be a joke. My idea of a perfect school, Miss Honey, is one that has no children in it at all. One of these days I shall start up a school like that. I think it will be very successful. The woman's mad, Miss Honey was telling herself. She's round the twist. She's the one who ought to be got rid of. Like, Roald Dahl thought this in his head and wrote it down on the paper and edited it. Like, he's so funny. Just... what was he on? He's really funny in just a really mad way. Like, was he on ketamine or something? Do you know what I mean? Don't you get impertinent with me, Miss Honey, the Trunchbull snapped. Then she turned back to the unfortunate Wilfred. Very well, boy, she said. Answer me this. I have 7 apples, 7 oranges and 7 bananas. How many pieces of fruit do I have altogether? Hurry up, get on with it. Give me the answer. That's adding up, Wilfred cried. That isn't the 3 times table. You blithering idiot, shouted the Trunchbull. You festering gumboil. You flea-bitten fungus. That's going to be my go-to insult to like any YouTuber that annoys me now. You flea-bitten fungus. That is the 3 times table. You have 3 separate lots of fruit and each lot has 7 pieces. 3 sevens are 21. Can't you see that, you stagnant cesspool? And these are books for kids. I feel like I'm a full-grown adult and I'm enjoying this. I feel like Roald Dahl kind of trusted kids to be smarter than some adults give them credit for. Because look, I mean, I read The Beano and Dandy every week, and I've read like Dennis the Menace, and I've read like the Horrid Henrys and stuff. But this is just it's in a different league. Like, there were some concepts in the bit where Matilda's father is ripping out the pages of the library, and it's said in the text, it's because it's something about her reading it, because he's not very good at reading. It made him a bit jealous, like, why should you enjoy something that I'm unable to? And I feel like that's quite a more grown-up concept than one would maybe normally put in kids' books made for like, what, 8-year-olds? Which I think it's a good thing. It's trusting children. Who went on about that? No, I think I just read a discussion somewhere about the original Jumanji and how Alan was dealing with was he dealing with the loss of his parents? I've not seen the original Jumanji in like 20 years. But kids' films kind of trusted children a bit more with heavier subjects or more grown-up concepts than maybe we have so much nowadays. I just think it's very interesting. That's why I'm doing a video on this. I'll give you one more chance. I have 8 coconuts, 8 monkey nuts, and 8 nutty little idiots like you. How many nuts do I have altogether? Ask me quickly. All the nuts. She is Billy Big Balls. Another book that I'd never read this, but the front cover fucking cracks me up. And that is, I mean, I'll put it here. That is the Twits. And I never read it until maybe this morning or yesterday, I can't remember. I've had a blistering headache all day. But just so rotten, so horrible, so butters. And they're called the Twits. And just the idea of Roald Dahl sitting there and just making this book, and then Quentin Blake illustrating and really cracks me up. So I decided to give it a read. But first, the overview on Wikipedia says, the idea of the Twits was triggered by Dahl's desire to do something against beards because he had an acute hatred of them. The first sentence of the story is, what a lot of hairy-faced men there are around nowadays. Isn't that just like the pinnacle of petty? I aspire to be that petty, that I would write an entire book to damn and judge people doing something that I don't agree with. What would that be? People who simp for billionaires on Facebook. Maybe I should make an entire children's book based on this concept. Like, look at this. Introducing Mr. Twit, Mrs. Twit, the roly-poly bird, the muggle-wump monkeys. Look at them. Look at the state of them. What a lot of hairy-faced men there are around nowadays. When a man grows hair all over his face, it is impossible to tell what he really looks like. Perhaps that's why he does it. He'd rather you didn't know. That's so deep. That's like, it's like on dating apps. If people have sunglasses in all their pictures, hiding something. Little tip for you there. Oh, Alizee, what about people wearing makeup? Makeup can certainly sculpt and change the contours of your face, but it's not the same as... Not the same. Don't be disingenuous. And look how much minimal makeup I've got on. I know, I look horrible. I look like a twit. When the very hairy ones wash their faces, I think this is just like Roald Dahl hated hipsters. Because Mr. Twit, he has these monkeys and he tries to get them to do everything upside down because he wants to make a circus of these monkeys doing everything upside down, like that's their USP. That is a very hipster thing to do, and he's got this great big bushy beard, I'm just saying. It must be as big a job as when you and I wash the hair on our heads. So what I want to know is this. How often do all these hairy-faced men wash their faces? This isn't fiction. This is just Roald Dahl's diary. Is it only once a week like us on Sunday nights? And do they shampoo it? Do they use a hairdryer? Do they rub hair tonic in it to stop their faces from going bald? Do they go to a barber to have their hairy faces cut and trimmed? Or do they do it themselves in front of the bathroom mirror with nail scissors? I don't know. But next time you see a man with a hairy face, which will probably be as soon as you step out onto the street, society's doomed, everyone's got hairy faces, maybe you'll go look at him more closely and start wondering about some of these things. Mr. Twit. Mr. Twit was one of those very hairy-faced men. The whole of his face, except for his forehead, his eyes and his nose, was covered with thick hair. The stuff even sprouted in revolting tufts out of his nostrils and ear holes. Mr. Twit felt that this hairiness made him look terrifically wise and grand, but in truth he was neither of these things. Mr. Twit was a twit. He was born a twit, and now at the age of 60, he was a bigger twit than ever. Alright, this is Mr. Twit's beard. It's got cornflakes, tin sardines, and Stilton cheese. Because, just always in it. Because of all this, Mr. Twit was never really went hungry. By sticking out his tongue and curling it sideways to explore the hairy jungle around his mouth, he was always able to find a tasty morsel here and there to nibble on. So what I'm trying to tell you is that Mr. Twit was a foul and smelly old man. He was also an extremely horrid old man, as you will find out in a moment. What are you on about? I think that's legendary. You'd never have to go hungry, would you? You could always save a bit for later. Take a look at her. I was literally being like, look at the state of that. Have you ever seen a woman with an uglier face than that? I doubt it. But the funny thing is that Mrs. Twit wasn't born ugly. She had quite a nice face when she was young. The ugliness had grown upon her year by year as she got older. And that's because if a person has ugly thoughts, it begins to show on their face. And when the person has ugly thoughts every day, every week, every year, the face gets uglier and uglier. But if you have nice thoughts, then you could have, crooked teeth and a big nose, but you'll always look lovely. That's a very famous quote. It's not true though. I'm really horrible, but I'm a clear 6 out of 10. Oh, do shut up, you old hag, Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer and his evil mind kept working away on the last horrid trick he was going to play on the old woman. Look at him, he's so rotten. Like, what was Roald Dahl on? Is he okay? Was he on crack? I don't know. Just what an imagination to come up with this stuff. I love it. Today, although they were retired, Mr. Twit still wanted to train monkeys. It was his dream that one day he would own the first great upside down monkey circus in the world. That meant the monkeys had to do everything upside down. They had to dance upside down on their hand with their feet in the air. They had to play football upside down. They had to balance one on top of the other upside down, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest baby monkey at the top. They even had to eat and drink upside down, and that's not an easy thing to do because the food and water has to go up your throat instead of down it. Poor monkeys. I don't know why I felt the need to share all that, but I just thought fair's fair. I'll just share something that I've actually enjoyed recently, and that is Roald Dahl's books for children, which I think secretly are maybe kind of books for fun adults like me. Why was he so funny? What was wrong with him? Was he on something? These are questions that I don't really need the answer to because I want the mystery. I want it to remain a mystery in my head. I just want to imagine that he was just slamming loads of drugs and then writing these books. All right. Anyway, that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my podcast channel. I make videos whenever I want and clearly on whatever I want. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.